The ultrasound photo slipped from Zara's trembling fingers before she could stop it. It landed face up on the marble floor of the Sheila Hotel's presidential suite, the grainy image of their unborn child staring at the ceiling like an accusation nobody had made yet. Across the room, Kongday sat motionless on the velvet settee. His shirt collar hung open. A woman's manicured fingers rested against the black ink of the dragon tattoo that curved beneath his collarbone, the same tattoo Zara had traced on their wedding night. He looked up. Too late. Their eyes met across 20 feet of silence, and Zara watched something flicker behind his cold gaze. Not guilt, not shock, something worse. Recognition. Like he had been waiting for this moment. Like he had already calculated its arrival. The woman beside him didn't move her hand. Didn't even turn around. As if Zara's presence meant nothing. As if she had always been nothing. The ultrasound photo lay forgotten on the floor. Nobody spoke. Nobody explained. Zara turned and walked out of the room on legs that didn't feel like her own, leaving behind the shattered remains of everything she had sacrificed to love him. Before this story breaks your heart completely, take 1 second to like, share and subscribe, and tell me in the comments, would you forgive betrayal if the truth came too late? The elevator doors closed with a whisper. Zara pressed her back against the mirrored wall and watched her reflection fragment across the polished surfaces, a woman in pieces, multiplied into infinity. Her hand moved to her stomach instinctively, pressing against the slight curve that nobody knew about yet. Nobody except the doctor. And now nobody at all. The elevator descended 47 floors in silence. Zara counted each number as it flickered past, using the rhythm to hold herself together. 46, 45, 44. She had come here to surprise him. 3 months of planning. 3 months of keeping the pregnancy secret until the perfect moment. She had imagined his face when she showed him the ultrasound. The rare softening of his jaw, the almost invisible warmth that sometimes flickered behind his eyes when they were alone. 32, 31, 30. Instead, she had found that woman's fingers on his skin. The elevator chimed softly as it passed the 20th floor. Zara caught her reflection again and noticed the tears streaming down her cheeks. She hadn't felt them start. Hadn't felt anything except the cold numbness spreading through her chest like ice water. 15, 14, 15. Her phone buzzed in her clutch. She didn't look at it. She already knew who it would be. The lobby of the Sheila Hotel gleamed with the kind of quiet luxury that Seoul's elite took for granted. Crystal chandeliers casting soft light across Italian marble, staff members moving like ghosts in perfectly pressed uniforms. Zara walked through it all without seeing any of it. Her heels clicked against the floor in a steady rhythm that felt disconnected from her body, as if she were watching herself from somewhere far away. The doorman held the entrance open with a practiced bow, and the night air hit her face like a slap. Cold. December cold. The kind that Seoul wore like a warning. She had forgotten her coat upstairs. Left it draped across the chair in the suite where she had expected to celebrate, not mourn. But going back was impossible. Going back meant facing him. Meant hearing whatever excuse he had prepared. Meant pretending she hadn't seen what she had seen. A black Maybach idled at the curb. Kongday's car, waiting for him as it always did. The driver spotted her and started to step out, confusion flickering across his weathered face. She shook her head once, sharply, and kept walking. Her phone buzzed again. Then stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than the ringing. Rain began to fall as Zara reached Myeongdong Station. Not the gentle rain of autumn. This was winter rain, sharp and bitter, the kind that soaked through fabric in seconds. Her silk dress clung to her skin as she descended into the station, but she barely noticed. The cold had become indistinguishable from the numbness. The platform was nearly empty at this hour. A few late commuters hunched over phones, their faces illuminated by screen glow. Nobody looked up as she passed. Nobody noticed the pregnant wife of Seoul's most dangerous man walking among them like a ghost. She found a bench at the far end and sat. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, that peculiar frequency that lived somewhere between comfort and madness. A train announcement echoed through the tunnel, the words muffled into meaninglessness. Her phone had stopped buzzing entirely now. Zara pulled it from her clutch and stared at the screen. 12 missed calls. All from the same number. His number. She watched as a 13th call came through. His name appearing in stark white letters against the black background. Kongday. No photo. No personalization. Just his name, as cold and clinical as everything else about their marriage. The call ended. Text appeared immediately after. Where are you? Not a question. Command. Even through text, even through the impersonal medium of words on a screen. His authority bled through. She could almost hear his voice. Low, controlled, revealing nothing. She didn't respond. A train pulled into the station with a mechanical screech. And Zara stood. She didn't know where this line went. Didn't care. Anywhere was better than here. Anywhere was better than waiting for him to find her. The doors slid open. She stepped inside. The train carried her into the darkness. The apartment Zara had kept secret for 2 years sat in a forgotten corner of Mapo-gu. It was nothing like the penthouse she shared with Kongday. No floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River. No art collection worth more than small nations. No silent staff members who watched her every movement with careful eyes. This place was small. Simple. Anonymous. She had rented it 6 months after their wedding, paying in cash under a name that existed only on paper. Place where she could breathe. Where she could remember who she had been before she became CEO Kongday's wife. The key still fit the lock. Zara pushed the door open and stepped inside. Her wet clothes leaving a trail of water across the wooden floor. The air smelled stale, she hadn't been here in months, but beneath the staleness was something like relief. 50. Now. She moved through the darkness without turning on the lights, navigating by memory to the bedroom. The mattress was bare, sheets stored in the closet, but she didn't bother pulling them out. She simply lay down on the naked bed and stared at the ceiling. Her hand found her stomach again. The baby inside her had no idea what had happened tonight. Had no idea that its father had shattered everything. Had no idea that its mother was lying in a hidden apartment, alone, planning disappearance. Tears came then. Not the silent streams from the elevator. These were different. Ugly, violent, pulled from somewhere so deep they felt ancient. She pressed her fist against her mouth to muffle the sound. An instinct built from years of hiding her emotions from staff members who reported everything. She cried until there was nothing left. Then she lay still, listening to her own breathing, and began to plan. Morning came gray and unforgiving. Zara woke to the sound of rain still falling against the window, lighter now but persistent. Her dress had dried stiff and uncomfortable, and her body ached from sleeping on the bare mattress. But her mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in years. She sat up and pulled her phone from where it had fallen during the night. The screen showed 47 missed calls. All from him. Interspersed with texts that grew progressively shorter as the hours passed. Answer me. Zara. I know you're seeing these. We need to talk. Then, at 4:47 a.m. Whatever you think you saw. She stopped reading and turned the phone off. Whatever she thought she saw. As if her own eyes were unreliable. As if she hadn't watched another woman's hands on her husband's skin. As if the intimacy of that moment, the way the woman hadn't even turned around, the way Kongday hadn't pushed her away, meant nothing. Zara stood and walked to the window. Seoul sprawled beneath the gray sky, millions of lives intersecting and separating without ever truly touching. She had lived in this city for 5 years now. Had learned its rhythms, its silences, its particular way of hiding cruelty beneath beauty. She had thought she understood it. She had thought she understood him. But Seoul kept secrets, and so did CEO Kongday. The difference was that Seoul's secrets couldn't break her heart. 2 days later, Zara was on a plane to Lagos. She had moved quickly, withdrawing cash, converting it to Naira, booking tickets under the name she had used for this apartment. No credit cards, no digital trail. Nothing that his people could track. His people. Even now, she thought of them that way. As extensions of him. Arms that reached everywhere, eyes that missed nothing. She had lived inside that surveillance for 3 years, had grown accustomed to being watched, protected, contained. She was about to discover how far those arms could actually reach. The flight attendant offered her a blanket, and Zara accepted with a smile that felt foreign on her face. She settled into her business class seat, the last luxury she would allow herself, and watched Seoul shrink beneath the clouds. She was leaving behind everything. Penthouse. The status. The marriage that had once felt like salvation and had slowly become a beautiful prison. But she was taking something with her. Her hand moved to her stomach, hidden beneath the loose sweater she had purchased that morning. Whatever else happened, Kongday would never know about this child. Never know what he had lost. The plane climbed higher, and Zara closed her eyes, and Seoul disappeared beneath a blanket of white. 3 years passed like water through clenched fists. Lagos embraced Zara the way it embraced all its prodigal daughters, with heat, chaos, noise, and an overwhelming sense of belonging. She had forgotten how alive this city felt, how different from Seoul's controlled elegance. Here everything was excessive. Emotions lived on the surface. Arguments happened in public. Love was declared loudly, repeatedly, without shame. Took months for Zara to learn how to exist in that loudness again. But she had learned. And she had healed. Slowly, imperfectly, but genuinely. Her daughter had been born in a private hospital in Victoria Island, surrounded by nurses who spoke Yoruba and English in a melody Zara had missed without realizing. She had named her Heir, wonder in her mother's tongue. Heir had her father's eyes. That was the first thing Zara noticed when the nurses placed the newborn on her chest. Dark, piercing, already too observant for an infant. Eyes that seemed to be calculating the world before they could properly see it. Kongday's eyes. It should have hurt more than it did. But somehow, looking into those familiar depths, Zara had felt only gratitude. Her daughter would carry pieces of him. The sharpness, perhaps, the intelligence, certainly, but she would never know his coldness. Never know his silences. Never know the particular pain of loving someone who could not love back. By the time Heir turned 3, Zara had built something resembling a life. She worked as an art consultant now. Lower profile than her days in Seoul, but steady income and flexible hours that allowed her to be present for Heir's milestones. They lived in a modest apartment in Ikoyi. Comfortable but unremarkable. Exactly what she wanted. Her family knew the basics, that she had been married, that it had ended badly, that the details were too painful to discuss. They had stopped asking after the first year, accepting her silence the way African families learned to accept the silences of their wandering daughters. She had almost stopped looking over her shoulder. Almost. The fear never completely disappeared. It lived in the back of her mind like a second heartbeat, the knowledge that somewhere in that glittering city across the world, a man was probably still searching for her. Or maybe not. Maybe he had moved on. Maybe the woman from the hotel had become his new wife. Maybe Zara's absence was a relief, a complication removed from his carefully ordered life. She tried to believe that. It was easier than the alternative. The day everything changed began like any other Thursday. Zara was picking Heir up from her Montessori school, weaving through the chaos of afternoon traffic in the small Toyota she had purchased secondhand. Heir chattered from her car seat about shapes and colors and a boy named Chitty who had pushed her during recess. "And what did you do?" Zara asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. "I looked at him. Just looked. Like this." Heir's small face went suddenly still, her dark eyes fixing on her mother's reflection with an intensity that was startling in a 3-year-old. Zara's blood went cold. She had seen that look before. Had seen it across boardrooms, across dinner tables, across 20 feet of hotel suite as an ultrasound photo slipped from her fingers. Kongday's look. The look that made powerful men confess before being asked. "And then Chitty said sorry," Heir finished, her face relaxing back into childish softness. Zara gripped the steering wheel tighter and said nothing. The apartment was quiet when they returned. Too quiet. Zara noticed it the moment she stepped through the door, the particular quality of silence that meant someone had been there. Nothing was disturbed. Nothing was missing. But the air felt different, displaced, like the ghost of a presence still lingered. She set Era down gently. Go to your room, baby. Mama needs to check something. Can I watch cartoons? In a minute. Era toddled off without argument, already absorbed in her own small world. Zara moved through the apartment slowly, methodically, checking each room with the paranoia she had spent 3 years trying to forget. Living room. Clear. Kitchen. Clear. Her bedroom. On her pillow, placed with deliberate precision, lay a single photograph. Zara picked it up with hands that had started trembling. It was a picture of her. Walking Era into school that morning, their hands linked, their faces turned toward each other in mid-laugh. The photo had been taken from across the street. Professional quality. Recent. On the back, in handwriting she would recognize until the day she died, were 2 words. Found you. Panic came in waves. First the cold sweat. Then the racing heart. Then the particular metallic taste of fear coating her tongue. Zara stood frozen in her bedroom, the photograph burning in her grip, and felt the walls of her carefully constructed life crumbling around her. 3 years. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of new names and cash payments and anonymous apartments. 3 years of believing she had escaped. And he had found her anyway. Of course he had. He was CEO Kongday. She should have known better. Should have gone further. Should have disappeared into a country without extradition, without digital infrastructure, without any connection to her former life. But she had been tired, and pregnant, and heartbroken, and Lagos had felt like home. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. She stared at it for a long moment, watching the screen glow and dim, glow and dim. Then, with the resigned certainty of someone approaching their own execution, she answered. Silence on the other end. Not empty silence, she could hear breathing. Steady. Controlled. Patient. His breathing. I know it's you, she said. More silence. Then his voice, unchanged by 3 years of distance. She has my eyes. The line went dead. Sleep didn't come that night. Zara sat in the living room long after Era had fallen asleep, watching the front door like she expected it to splinter inward at any moment. Her passport sat on the coffee table beside a packed go-bag, essentials for her and Era, enough cash to disappear again. But where would she go? He had found her once. He would find her again. And now he knew about Era. That changed everything. A man like Kongday didn't let go of what belonged to him. His empire, his power, his legacy. All of it was built on the principle of possession, of control. And now he knew he had a daughter. Heir. His bloodline. Zara pressed her palms against her eyes until colors burst behind the darkness. She had spent 3 years preparing for many things. Poverty, loneliness, the gradual fading of love, but she had never prepared for this. For him coming back. For having to face him again. Her phone buzzed once more. Different number this time, but she knew it was him. Knew he had multiple phones, multiple ways of reaching through the distance to touch her life. She answered, What do you want? His response came immediately, as if he had been waiting. You know what I want. I won't let you take her. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped lower, dangerously soft. I don't remember asking your permission. The line went dead again. Zara threw the phone across the room with a violence that surprised her. It hit the wall and clattered to the floor, screen cracking but still illuminated, still connecting her to him. She pulled Era's door open and watched her daughter sleep, small face peaceful, dark hair spread across the pillow, completely unaware that her world was about to be upended by a father she had never met. A father who would never stop hunting. A father who would burn the world to claim what was his. The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. Zara contacted everyone she could trust. Lawyers, old friends in security, anyone who might help her understand her options. The answers were not encouraging. Nigerian custody law would protect her to an extent. But Kongday didn't operate within legal frameworks. He existed in the spaces between laws, in the shadows where money and power created their own rules. If he wanted Era, he would find a way. Unless she found a way to stop him. Her phone had stopped ringing after that second call, but she felt his presence everywhere now. In the black SUV that appeared on her street. In the well-dressed men who lingered near her daughter's school. In the uncomfortable awareness that she was being watched, measured, evaluated. He was letting her see the surveillance. That was the terrifying part. He wanted her to know she couldn't escape. On the third day he came himself. Zara was returning from the market, Era's hand clasped firmly in hers, when she saw the convoy parked outside her apartment building. 3 black Escalades with tinted windows, each one gleaming with a kind of aggressive cleanliness that screamed foreign money. Her feet stopped moving. Era tugged at her hand. "Mama. Why did we stop?" "'Cause he's here. Because the man I ran from is standing somewhere behind those tinted windows. Because everything I've built is about to collapse. No reason, baby." She forced herself to keep walking. Forced herself to breathe. Running would accomplish nothing. If he was here, escape was no longer possible. The only option was to face him. To face what she had been fleeing for 3 years. The door to the middle Escalade opened as she approached. First came the shoes. Italian leather, polished to a mirror shine, utterly impractical for Lagos streets. Then the legs, clad in perfectly tailored black trousers. Then the torso, covered by a charcoal suit jacket that probably cost more than her car. Then his face. Seoul Kongday stepped onto Nigerian soil looking exactly as she remembered. Cold eyes, dark jaw, expression revealing nothing. Except, there was something different now. Something around the edges of his composure that hadn't been there before. A fracture in the marble facade. His gaze dropped to Era. And for the first time in the years Zara had known him, she watched Seoul Kongday's expression crack. He didn't speak. Didn't move. Simply stood there, staring at the daughter he had never known existed, while Lagos traffic roared past and heat shimmered off the pavement. Era, unaware of the significance of this moment, tugged on Zara's hand again. "Mama, who's that man?" "He's staring." Zara's throat closed around the words she should say. "That's your father. That's the man I ran from. That's the reason your mother wakes up screaming some nights. He's someone Mama used to know." "Is he a stranger?" Era's voice dropped to a whisper. "You said don't talk to strangers." "Smart girl." Kongday's voice cut through the heat. His first words to his daughter, low and steady, giving nothing away. Era's eyes widened. Then, impossibly, she smiled. "Your voice sounds funny," she said. A muscle in Kongday's jaw twitched. The closest Zara had ever seen him come to surprise. "Korean accent," he said simply. "Oh." Era considered this information with the seriousness of a UN diplomat. "Okay." He turned to Zara. "Can we go inside now? I'm hungry." "In a minute, baby. But I'm hungry now." Kongday's gaze finally lifted from Era to meet Zara's eyes. The crack had sealed itself. His expression returning to stone. "We need to talk." "No. That wasn't a request. I don't care." Zara pulled Era closer. "Whatever you came here to say, I don't want to hear it." "Then I'll say it anyway." He took one step forward, and Zara took one step back, Era bumping against her legs. He stopped. "You took something that belongs to me. She doesn't belong to you. She has my blood. Blood doesn't make a father." Another muscle twitch. "You don't get to make that decision alone. I made it 3 years ago." Zara's voice was rising now, all the fear and anger of the past days bleeding through her composure. "When you made your choice. When you showed me exactly what I meant to you." Confusion flickered across his face. Genuine confusion. "What choice?" "Don't. Zara. Don't say my name." She was shaking now, Era's small hand gripping hers tightly. "Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about. I was there. I saw you." "What did you see?" "Her hands on you. Her fingers on your tattoo. The way you," her voice broke. She hated herself for it. The way you just sat there. Like I didn't matter. Like I had never mattered. The silence that followed was different from his usual calculated pauses. This silence felt dangerous. You think, he said slowly, each word dropping like a stone, that I betrayed you. I know you did. You're wrong. I saw. You saw what she wanted you to see. His voice had dropped to something barely above a whisper. And you ran. Without asking. Without letting me explain. You took my daughter and disappeared for 3 years because of what you thought you saw. Zara's grip on Era's hand tightened. That's not. You left me. The words hung in the heavy air. You left me, he repeated, and something in his voice cracked. Something she had never heard before. And you took her with you. The conversation continued inside. Not because Zara wanted it to, but because Era was hungry and tired and starting to pick up on the tension. Because standing on a Lego street arguing with a mafia boss was attracting attention. Because some battles were better fought behind closed doors. Kongday's men stayed outside. All except one. A stone-faced Korean man who positioned himself by the front door and didn't acknowledge Zara's existence. Era was installed in front of cartoons with a bowl of sliced mango. She watched the screen with single-minded focus, apparently unbothered by the strange man sitting in her living room. Children adapted. It was adults who broke. Explain. Zara stood across the room from him, arms crossed, every muscle in her body tight with defensive tension. If I was wrong, explain. Kongday sat on her small sofa, looking utterly incongruous against the modest furniture. His eyes tracked to Era every few seconds, as if he couldn't quite believe she was real. Her name, he said. Tell me her name. Explain first. Tell me her name. No. He looked at her then. Really looked. And in his eyes she saw something that made her breath catch. Not anger, not calculation, but something raw. Something wounded. Please. In 3 years of marriage, she had never heard him say that word. Era, she said quietly. Her name is Era. He repeated it silently, his lips shaping the sounds. Then he closed his eyes, and for a moment he looked like a man in prayer. The woman you saw, he said finally, eyes still closed, was Min Ji-young, daughter of the Min family. I don't care who she. Let me finish. His eyes opened. The Min family controls half of Busan's shipping ports. They wanted an alliance. Marriage. They had been pressuring me for months. A marriage. Zara's voice was flat. To her. Yes. And you were considering it. I was refusing it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, intensity radiating from every line of his body. Do you understand what that means? Refusing a family like the Mints. They don't take rejection lightly. So you let her touch you instead. She broke into the hotel suite, paid off my security, set up the entire scene. His jaw tightened. She knew you were coming. Someone told her about the ultrasound appointment. She timed everything perfectly. Zara's head was spinning. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense. If she couldn't have me through alliance, she would have me through destruction. His voice hardened. And you gave her exactly what she wanted. You ran. You disappeared. And without you, without your protection. He stopped. What? Zara stepped closer. Without my protection, what? I became vulnerable. The admission hung in the air between them. From the television, cartoon music played cheerfully, Era giggling at something on screen. Vulnerable, Zara repeated. You were my weakness. Everyone knew it. The way I watched you. The way I arranged things around you. He looked down at his hands. When you left, they all saw their opportunity. Mints, the other families, everyone who had been waiting for a crack. You're saying I protected you. I'm saying you were the only thing they could use against me. He looked up again. And once you were gone, they tried everything else. The conversation continued for hours. By the time Era fell asleep on the floor, Exhausted from the day's strange events, Zara's entire understanding of the past 3 years had been upended. Kongday told her about the aftermath of her disappearance, the war with the Min family, the 18 months of violence that had nearly destroyed his empire, the systematic hunting for her that had consumed every resource he possessed. "I searched everywhere," he said, and for the first time, she heard exhaustion in his voice. "Every contact, every database, every person who had ever known you. Nothing. I was careful. You were invisible." Something like respect flickered across his face. "I didn't know you had that in you. You didn't know a lot of things about me." Clearly. They sat in silence as the night deepened around them. The stone-faced guard had brought food at some point, expensive takeout that looked ridiculous in Zara's modest kitchen, but neither of them had eaten. "Why should I believe any of this?" she asked finally. "You shouldn't." She blinked. "What?" "I'm a liar, Zara. I lie for a living. I manipulate, I deceive, I destroy." He held her gaze steadily. "But I have never lied to you. Not once. Not about anything that mattered." "That's exactly what a liar would say." "I know." He stood, moving with the controlled grace she remembered. "That's why I brought proof." He pulled a phone from his jacket and typed something. A moment later, the guard entered carrying a leather briefcase. Kongday took it without acknowledgement and set it on the coffee table. Surveillance footage from the hotel. Security reports showing the bribed guards. Financial records proving the Min family's payments. Testimony from staff members who witnessed Ji Young's entry. He opened the case, revealing stacks of organized documents and several USB drives. "Everything you need to verify my version of events." Zara stared at the evidence. "You brought all this with you." "I've been carrying it for 3 years. Waiting for the day I found you." He closed the case and stepped back. "Take it. Have your lawyers review it. Have anyone you trust verify the authenticity. I'll wait." "You'll wait. I've waited this long." She looked at him, really looked, and saw what 3 years had done. The lines around his eyes were deeper. The gray at his temples more pronounced. He carried himself with the same terrifying confidence, but there was something hollow beneath it now. Something missing. "Why?" she asked. "Why go to all this trouble? You could have any woman. Could have married Ji Young, taken the alliance, built an even bigger empire." He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Era's sleeping form on the floor, at the small body curled up under a blanket Zara had draped over her, at the dark hair spilling across the carpet. "Because she has my eyes," he said quietly. "And she has your smile. And I missed 3 years of her life because a woman I didn't love tried to destroy the woman I did." Zara's breath caught. "I would burn the world for her." He turned back to Zara, and in his eyes she saw something she had never seen before. Not calculation, not control, but something raw and terrified and desperately human. "But I already burned it for you. 3 years ago. When you left and took my heart with you." The words hung in the silence. Cartoons played on the forgotten television. And Zara felt the foundations of her carefully constructed life begin to crack. She didn't believe him. That was what she told herself as she watched his convoy pull away from her building the next morning. As she reviewed the documents he had left behind. As she made calls to lawyers and security consultants and anyone who could help her understand what was real. She didn't believe him. But with each passing hour, her disbelief grew harder to maintain. The surveillance footage was authentic. Her contacts confirmed it within days. The financial records traced back to legitimate sources. The testimonies lined up perfectly. The bribes. Timing. The careful orchestration of a scene designed to destroy a marriage. Ji Young had played her. Had stood there with her hands on Kongday's tattoo, knowing Zara was walking through that door, knowing exactly how it would look. And Zara had fallen for it. Had fallen for it completely. A week later, Kongday returned. This time he came alone. No convoy. No guards. Just him, standing on her doorstep in the early morning light, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "The documents," he said. "Did you review them?" "Yes. And I believe you." Something shifted in his face. Relief, perhaps, or something deeper. "But," she continued, "that doesn't change anything." His expression closed again. "What do you mean?" 3 years, Kongday. 3 years of raising a daughter alone. 3 years of being afraid. 3 years of... She stopped, composing herself. "I believe you didn't cheat on me. I believe Ji-young set the whole thing up. But you're still the same man. Still cold. Still secretive. Still..." She searched for the word. "Still impossible to reach." "I can change." "Can you? Really?" She stepped back from the door. "You're a mafia boss. Crime lord. Every day of your life involves violence and manipulation and secrets. How can I bring Era into that? I would protect her. Like you protected me." The words landed like a blow. She watched him absorb them, watched the flicker of pain he couldn't quite hide. "I failed you," he said quietly. "I know that. I should have seen what Ji-young was planning. Should have been more careful. Should have..." He stopped, jaw tight. "I should have talked to you. Told you about the pressure. Let you help me navigate it. But you didn't. I didn't. And I lost you because of it." They stood in the doorway, morning sun warming the air between them, while somewhere inside Era played with blocks and sang to herself. "She's happy here," Zara said finally. "She has friends. Routine. A life that doesn't involve armed guards and danger." "I know. I won't let you take her. I'm not trying to take her." He took a breath, and she watched him fight for control. "I'm trying to know her. To be part of her life. Whatever that looks like. Whatever you'll allow. And if I don't allow anything..." The question hung between them. She watched him process it, watched the struggle between his instinct for control and something else. Something newer. "Then I'll wait," he said finally. "I'll stay in Lagos. I'll be nearby. And when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." "You would wait." "I would wait forever." His voice dropped. "I've already waited 3 years. Another 30 wouldn't kill me." Zara studied his face, searching for the lie. Searching for the manipulation she knew he was capable of. She couldn't find it. "1 week," she said. 1 week of supervised visits. Era doesn't know who you are yet. She thinks you're someone Mama used to know. Someone she used to know." "Yes. And what happens after 1 week?" "I don't know." Zara stepped back into her apartment. "But it's a start." She closed the door between them and leaned against it and breathed. Behind her, Era's singing continued. Somewhere outside, a man who controlled half of Seoul's criminal empire stood on a Lagos doorstep, learning what it meant to have no control at all. The supervised visits began the next day. Kongday arrived in casual clothes, jeans and a simple black t-shirt that probably still cost more than Zara's monthly rent. He looked uncomfortable without his armor of tailored suits, exposed in a way she had rarely seen him. Era studied him with those familiar eyes. "You're the funny voice man." "Yes. Are you Mama's friend?" He glanced at Zara. She gave him nothing. "I'm someone who wants to be," he said carefully. Era considered this. "Okay. Do you want to see my blocks?" "Very much." She led him to her play corner, already chattering about colors and shapes and Chitty who pushed her but then said sorry. Kongday followed with the careful attention of a man defusing a bomb, every movement deliberate, every word considered. Zara watched from the kitchen, pretending to make tea. What she saw surprised her. Kongday was gentle, patient. He listened to Era's rambling explanations with focused intensity, asked questions that made her giggle, let her position his hands exactly where she wanted them when they built a tower together. When the tower fell, Era laughed. And Zara watched something in Kongday's face break open. Not in a destructive way. In the way ice breaks when spring finally comes. She saw him look at this small person, this daughter he had never known, and she saw him fall in love. completely, irreversibly, terrified her, because she knew what he was capable of when he loved something. The week passed faster than Zara expected. Daily visits became the rhythm. Mornings at the park. Afternoons with Era's blocks. Evenings reading stories before Zara firmly ushered him out. He obeyed every boundary she set. That surprised her most of all. The CEO Kongday she had known didn't obey anyone, didn't wait, didn't ask permission. And yet here he was, arriving and leaving exactly when she specified. Never pushing, never demanding, waiting like he'd promised. On the 6th day, Era asked the question Zara had been dreading. Mama. Her small voice carried across the kitchen where Kongday was helping her color. Is the funny voice man my daddy? The silence that followed was absolute. Zara's hands stilled on the dishes she was washing. Kongday's crayon stopped moving. Even the traffic outside seemed to pause. Why do you ask, baby? Because he has my eyes. Era said it matter-of-factly, the way children state obvious truths. And my hands. She held up her small hand next to Kongday's larger one. See. The same. Zara dried her hands slowly, walked to the table, knelt beside her daughter. Yes, baby, she said softly. He's your daddy. Era nodded like this confirmed something she had already suspected. Then she turned to Kongday with those piercing, familiar eyes. Why didn't you come before? The question hit him visibly. Zara watched his composure waver, watched him struggle with how to explain 3 years of absence to a 3-year-old. I was looking for you, he said finally. For a very long time. I'm sorry it took so long. Oh. Era considered this. Were we hiding? His eyes cut to Zara. She held his gaze, challenging him to blame her. You were on an adventure, he said instead. With your mama. A secret adventure. A secret adventure. Era's face lit up. Like pirates. Exactly like pirates. Cool. She returned to her coloring with renewed enthusiasm. Can you be a pirate too? I would like that, Kongday said quietly. Very much. That night, after Era was asleep, Kongday didn't leave. Zara found him on her small balcony, looking out at the Lagos skyline. The city sprawled beneath them. Chaotic, beautiful, alive in ways Seoul never was. She asked about you before, Zara said, joining him at the railing. Before you came. She would ask why other children had daddies and she didn't. He didn't respond. But his hands tightened on the railing. I told her that you were far away. That you had important work. That sometimes daddies have to be somewhere else for a while. He paused. I never told her you were gone. Never let her think you didn't want her. Thank you. His voice was rough. I didn't do it for you. I know. He turned to face her. In the soft glow from the apartment, she could see the emotion he usually kept buried. You did it for her. To protect her from the truth. From what you thought was the truth. He stepped closer. Not touching. He hadn't touched her since arriving in Lagos, but close enough that she could feel the heat of his body. Zara. Don't. Please. Let me say this. She should have walked away. Should have retreated to the safety of distance. But something kept her rooted. I never stopped looking, he said. Every day for 3 years. Every resource I had. Every favor I could call in. His hand rose slowly, hovering near her face but not quite making contact. I dreamed about you. Almost every night. Dreamed I found you. And then I woke up alone. Kongday. I was dying. The words came out harsh, broken. Without you. Without knowing where you were. Whether you were safe. Whether you. He stopped. Controlled himself. I was dying inside. And I didn't know why I was supposed to keep living. Zara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. I'm not asking you to forgive me, he continued. Not asking you to forget. Not asking for anything you're not ready to give. His hand finally made contact, just his fingertips against her cheek, so light it might have been imagined. I'm just asking you to believe that what I felt for you, what I still feel, was real. Is. He corrected himself quietly. Is. The night sounds of Lagos surrounded them. Distant music, honking horns, the endless pulse of a city that never truly slept. On the balcony of a modest apartment in Ikoyi, two people stood in the ruins of what they had once been. I can't go back to Seoul, Zara said finally. I can't go back to that life. The secrets, the surveillance, the constant danger. I know. I won't raise Era in fear. I know. And I can't. Her voice broke. She hated herself for it. I can't trust you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He nodded slowly. Step back. Let his hand fall. Then I'll wait, he said. However long it takes. You keep saying that. But what if I never? I don't care. His eyes held hers, and in them she saw something she had never seen in 3 years of marriage. Vulnerability. Raw, painful vulnerability. I waited 3 years to find you. I'll wait 30 more to earn you. The rest of my life if necessary. That's not. I'm not leaving, Zara. He moved toward the balcony door. I'm not leaving this city. Not leaving her. Not leaving you. I'll be here every day that you let me. Every day until you tell me to stop. And maybe even after that. He paused at the door. I've controlled empires. Manipulated governments. Destroyed enemies without lifting a finger. But I can't control this. Can't manipulate you into loving me again. Can't destroy the fear I put in your heart. He looked back at her, silhouetted against the apartment lights. So I'll wait. Because that's all I have left. He left. The balcony felt colder without him. And Zara stayed there until the sun began to rise, watching the city wake up, trying to understand how the man she had run from had become the man she was afraid to let go. 2 weeks later everything changed again. Started with a phone call. Zara was at the market, Era's hand in hers, when her phone buzzed with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Too many unknown numbers these days, most of them from Kongday's organization checking in. But something made her swipe. Hello. Zara Adeyemi. A woman's voice. Korean accent. Familiar in a way that made Zara's blood ice over. Who is this? You don't recognize me. I'm hurt. Soft laugh. Then again we only met once. Briefly. Before you ran away like a coward. Minjiang. Zara's hand tightened on Era's. How did you get this number? The same way I got everything else, darling. Money. Patience. Determination. I have to say Lagos suits you. Very authentic. What do you want? What I've always wanted. What was supposed to be mine before you came along and ruined everything. Jiyoung's voice hardened. He was supposed to fall apart without you. Supposed to come crawling to my family for support. Instead he went to war. Destroyed half of what my father built. And now here he is in Africa, playing house with you and that little accident you created. Don't talk about my daughter. Your daughter. Right. Another laugh, darker this time. Did you know he's transferred his entire base of operations here? Abandoned Seoul. Abandoned everything. All for you and that child. The line crackled. It's disgusting, really. What you've reduced him to. Zara pulled Era closer, scanning the market crowd. Looking for threats. Looking for watchers. Why are you calling me? To warn you. Jiyoung's voice dropped. I'm coming for him. For everything he has. And when I'm done, there won't be anything left of your pathetic little family. The line went dead. Zara stood frozen in the crowded market, Era tugging at her hand, while somewhere on the other side of the world, a woman who had already destroyed her once was planning to do it again. Zara didn't tell Kongday about the phone call. She should have. She knew she should have. But something held her back. Some combination of pride and fear and the stubborn independence that had kept her alive for 3 years. Instead, she watched him more carefully. Noticed things she had been too distracted to see before. The way he checked his phone constantly, tension rippling across his jaw with each notification. The way his security team had doubled in the past week. She counted at least 4 new faces rotating through her street. The way he sometimes paused mid-sentence during their visits, eyes going distant, as if listening to threats only he could hear. Something was happening. Something bigger than her. Bigger than Era. Bigger than their fragile attempts at reconciliation. On the 3rd day after Ji Young's call, Zara's suspicions were confirmed. She was returning from dropping Era at school when she noticed the black Mercedes parked at the end of her street. Not one of Kongday's vehicles. Wrong make, wrong plates, wrong feel. The tinted windows reflected the morning sun, giving nothing away. But she knew. She had spent 3 years learning to trust her instincts. Someone was watching. And it wasn't someone friendly. That night, Kongday arrived for his scheduled visit looking like he hadn't slept in days. The circles under his eyes were darker. His movements, usually so controlled, carried an edge of urgency. He played with Era like always. Blocks, then books, then the elaborate pretend game she had started inventing, but his attention kept drifting. After Era fell asleep on the couch, Zara cornered him in the kitchen. "What's wrong?" He didn't insult her by pretending ignorance. "Business complications." "What kind of complications?" "The kind you don't need to worry about. There's a Mercedes at the end of my street." Zara crossed her arms. "Wrong plates. No driver visible. It's been there since this morning." Something flickered in his eyes. "You noticed." "I notice everything now. You taught me that." He moved to the window, scanning the street with practiced efficiency. "I'll have it handled." "By whom?" "More guards. More surveillance." She stepped closer to him. "Tell me what's happening, Kongday. I'm tired of being kept in the dark." "It's complicated." "Uncomplicated." He turned to face her, and in the harsh kitchen light, she saw exactly how worn he had become. The man who had always seemed untouchable, unbreakable, was fracturing before her eyes. "The Min family," he said finally. "They've made an alliance with 2 other syndicates. Formed a coalition specifically designed to destroy everything I've built." Zara's stomach clenched. "Because of me. Because of my choices." He corrected her carefully. "I refused their alliance. Went to war when they tried to manipulate my marriage. And now I've left Seoul entirely, abandoned the territory my family spent 3 generations building. To be with us. To be with you." His voice dropped. "To try to earn back what I lost. And they see that as weakness. An opportunity. So that Mercedes is probably surveillance. They're tracking my movements, mapping my security, preparing for something." He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture of frustration she rarely saw from him. "I have people working on it. But this coalition. They're patient. Strategic. They won't move until they're certain they can win. And if they win." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Zara thought about Ji Young's call. About the promise to destroy everything. About Era sleeping peacefully on the couch, unaware that her father's enemies were circling like sharks. "You should have told me," she said quietly. "I was trying to protect you. By keeping me ignorant. By letting me walk around Lagos without knowing there are people who want to hurt you. Hurt us." Her voice rose before she caught herself. "That's not protection, Kongday. That's control. That's the same thing that broke us before." He absorbed her words in silence. Then slowly he nodded. "You're right." She blinked. "I'm what?" "Right. You're right." He met her eyes, and she saw something in them that looked almost like acceptance. "I spent 30 years learning to keep secrets. To protect through silence. It's the only way I know how to love." "That's not love. That's—" "I know." He cut her off gently. "I know what it is. And I'm trying to unlearn it. But it's difficult." He hesitated, then added, "I need you to help me." The admission hung between them like a bridge half-built. Help you how? Tell me when I'm doing it. When I'm retreating into silence instead of talking. When I'm trying to control instead of collaborate. He stepped closer, still not touching, always respecting her boundaries, but close enough that she could see the desperation beneath his composure. I don't know how to be the man you need, but I want to learn. If you'll let me. Zara studied his face, searching for the manipulation, the hidden agenda, the calculation she knew he was capable of. All she found was vulnerability. Raw, terrifying vulnerability from a man who had spent his entire life hiding behind armor. Okay, she said finally. Okay. We'll try. Relief flooded his features, just for a moment before he controlled it. Thank you. But, she held up a hand, that means no more secrets. About the business. About the enemies. About anything that could affect Era or me. Agreed. Agreed. And if I feel like you're shutting me out again, you tell me. He finished. Immediately. And I listen. They stood in her small kitchen, making promises that should have been made years ago, while their daughter slept peacefully and enemies gathered in the shadows. It was a beginning. Whether it would also be an ending remained to be seen. The Mercedes disappeared the next morning. So did the strange feeling of being watched. But the sense of danger didn't fade. It simply went underground, becoming a constant pressure beneath every interaction. Kongday began including Zara in his security briefings, explaining the complex web of alliances and threats in terms she could understand. She learned about the three families hunting them, about the resources they had committed, about the time frame his intelligence suggested for their attack. She also learned something else, something that changed everything. There's another option, Kongday said one evening after Era had been put to bed. They sat on her small balcony again, watching the Lagos skyline. A way to end this without waiting for them to strike. What option? I could give them what they want. Zara turned to look at him. What does that mean? They want my empire, my territory, my connections. He spoke quietly, as if the words cost him something. If I surrender it all, completely publicly, they would have no reason to come after us. You would give up everything you've built. I would give up everything I've inherited. He corrected her. Everything my family forced me to become. Everything that took you away from me. But that's... She struggled for words. That's your entire identity. No. He met her eyes. That's who I was. Who I thought I had to be. He reached out, and for the first time in weeks, he touched her. Just his hand covering hers on the railing. You're who I want to be. You and Era. Everything else is just... noise. The warmth of his hand against hers sent electricity through her entire body. How long had it been since he'd touched her? Since she'd felt the weight of his presence without flinching away. You would really do that? She asked softly. Walk away from all of it. I would burn it to the ground if it meant keeping you safe. His thumb traced a circle on the back of her hand. I told you once that I'd wait forever. But waiting isn't enough anymore. I need to act. I need to remove the threat permanently. By giving up your power. By choosing a different kind of power. He raised her hand and pressed his lips against her knuckles, a gesture so achingly gentle it made her eyes burn. The power to be present. The power to watch my daughter grow up. The power to stand beside you without looking over my shoulder. Zara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away. You really mean that? I've never meant anything more. The Lagos night wrapped around them, warm, humid, alive with possibility. And for the first time since walking into that hotel suite 3 years ago, Zara allowed herself to imagine a future. Not just survival. Future. The decision was made the following week. Kongday's lawyers drew up the documents. His negotiators arranged the meetings. His empire, generations of accumulated power and influence, was systematically dismantled and distributed among his former rivals. The business world was shocked. The criminal underworld was more shocked. And somewhere in Seoul, Min Ji-young reportedly threw a glass against a wall when she heard the news. She had wanted to destroy him, to take everything he had. Instead, he had simply given it away. There was nothing left to take, nothing left to hold over him, nothing left to threaten. He had made himself untouchable by becoming ordinary. Zara watched the transformation with a mixture of awe and disbelief. The man who had controlled half of Seoul now spent his mornings at a Lagos cafe, reading newspapers while Era colored beside him. The man who had commanded armies of enforcers now argued with market vendors about the price of mangoes. The man who had been feared by governments now stood in line at immigration offices, waiting patiently for permanent residency paperwork. Should have seemed like diminishment. Instead, it looked like liberation. "You're different," she told him one afternoon. They were walking through Lekki Conservation Center, Era running ahead of them on the canopy walkway. "Lighter somehow. I feel lighter. No regrets." He considered the question seriously. The power was intoxicating. "I won't pretend otherwise. And there are things I could have accomplished with it. Legitimate things. Philanthropic things. But I also remember what it cost." He watched Era leap between wooden planks, laughing. The sleepless nights. Paranoia. The constant awareness that everyone around me either wanted something from me or wanted me dead. He turned to Zara. "That's not a life. That's a sentence. And this." She gestured at the nature reserve, the humidity, the ordinary afternoon with their daughter. "This is freedom." They walked in companionable silence, the sounds of the forest surrounding them. Somewhere above, birds called to each other. Below, the lagoon rippled with unseen creatures. It was so different from Seoul, so far from the world they had both left behind. "I'm not ready," Zara said suddenly. Kongday glanced at her. "Not ready for what?" For trying again." She struggled to articulate what she was feeling. "You've done everything right. You've changed. You've given up everything. But there's still this." She touched her chest. "This fear. Deep down. That it's not real. That eventually you'll become who you were again." "I understand." "You do. Of course." He stopped walking, facing her fully. "I spent 3 years hunting for you. 3 years of obsession. That kind of intensity doesn't inspire trust. It inspires terror." His voice dropped. "I know what I am, Zara. What I was capable of. And I know that showing you I've changed will take longer than a few weeks of good behavior. So what do? We take it slowly." He started walking again, matching her pace. "I continue to be present. Continue to demonstrate through actions, not words. And you continue to heal. To build trust at your own pace. However long it takes. And if it takes years, then it takes years. Decades. Then it takes decades." He caught her hand, squeezing gently. "I told you I'd wait forever. Meant it. Every single word." Ahead of them, Era turned and waved, her face bright with uncomplicated joy. Zara waved back, feeling something loosen in her chest. Maybe healing was possible. Maybe trust could be rebuilt. Maybe after everything they could find their way back to each other. Slowly, carefully, but genuinely. The months that followed were quiet in the best possible way. Kongday settled fully into Lagos life. He learned Yoruba from Era's tutor and Nigerian pidgin from the security guard downstairs. He invested in local businesses, art galleries, small restaurants, a women's shelter in Ajigunle, but always quietly, never seeking credit or attention. He became impossibly ordinary. And as his ordinariness grew, so did Zara's trust. It happened in small moments. The first time she let him pick Era up from school alone. The first time she fell asleep during one of his visits, her head dropping against the couch cushion without fear. The first time she laughed, really laughed, at something he said. He noticed each breakthrough, even when she didn't point them out. She noticed him noticing. Felt like being seen. truly seen for the first time since their marriage. On the anniversary of his arrival in Lagos, Kongday prepared dinner at her apartment. Nothing fancy, just jollof rice and fried plantains, a recipe he had learned from Era's nanny. But the effort was evident in every dish. After Era fell asleep, they sat on the balcony again. Their spot now unofficially. The place where they negotiated their fragile peace. 1 year, Zara said quietly. 1 year. You're still here. I told you I would be. She turned to look at him, really look. The harsh lines of his face had softened slightly, whether from the Lagos sun or the absence of constant stress. He still dressed well, still moved with controlled grace, but the edge of danger that had always surrounded him had faded. I trust you, she said. The words hung between them. His breath caught. You do. With Era. With her safety. With. She hesitated. With most things. Most things. Not all things. Not yet. She reached out and touched his hand. But more than before. Much more. He turned his hand over, palm up, letting her fingers interlace with his. That's enough, he said. That's more than I dared hope for. They sat in silence, holding hands, watching the city lights flicker below. Can I ask you something? He said eventually. Depends on what it is. The night we met. At the ambassador's gala in Singapore. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. What did you think of me? Honestly. Zara smiled at the memory. I thought you were terrifying. Terrifying. Completely. You stood in the corner watching everyone like you were planning their destruction. She turned to face him. I told my friends I was going to avoid you all night. And yet you came over. You were standing in front of the painting I wanted to see. The Kim Won-ki. She shook her head. I was an art curator. I wasn't going to let some scary businessman stop me from examining the most important piece in the collection. And what did I say? You said. She paused, remembering. You're the first person tonight who's looked at the art instead of the guests. And you said. That's because the art is more interesting. She laughed softly. And you almost. Smile. I saw it. Just the corner of your mouth. Like you weren't used to anyone talking back to you. I wasn't. I know. She squeezed his hand. That's why I kept doing it. The memory settled around them like a warm blanket. For a moment they were back there. Two strangers at a party, circling each other with cautious fascination. Before the marriage. Before the betrayal. Before the 3 years of pain. I fell in love with you that night, Kongday said quietly. The moment you told me the art was more interesting than me. That's not possible. It's true. He turned to face her fully. Something shifted. Something I didn't understand. I spent the rest of the evening trying to get close to you again. Do you remember? She did remember. The way he kept appearing wherever she went. The conversations that grew longer each time. The electric awareness of his presence even when he was across the room. I thought you were stalking me, she admitted. I probably was. His voice held a hint of self-deprecating humor. I didn't know what else to do. I had no experience with wanting someone. Not like that. No experience. I'd had relationships, if you could call them that. Strategic alliances. Physical arrangements. But actual wanting. He shook his head. Never. Until you. Zara felt her chest tighten. Why didn't you ever tell me this? When we were married. Because I was afraid. You. Afraid. Terrified. The admission came out rough, painful. You had so much power over me. You still do. And I was taught that power, that kind of power, was a vulnerability. Something to be hidden. Protected. So you hid it. I hid everything. He met her eyes, and in them she saw years of regret. I hid my feelings. My fears. My need for you. I thought if I kept you at a distance, if I stayed cold, I could control what you meant to me. And instead I lost you completely. His voice cracked. And I discovered that all that distance, all that control, it meant nothing. Because when you were gone I felt everything anyway. Every single feeling I had been hiding. All at once. Tears rolled down Zara's cheeks. She didn't try to stop them. I need you to know, he continued, that I'm not that man anymore. Not because I've changed who I am at my core, but because I've stopped hiding. From myself. From you. He raised their joined hands and pressed them against his chest, over his heart. This is yours. It's always been yours. I just didn't know how to say it. Kongday. You don't have to say anything. He released her hand gently. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens between us. Whatever you decide. I needed you to know the truth. The truth. After 3 years of doubt, of fear, of wondering if she had ever really known him. The truth. Zara stood up from her chair. Walked the 2 steps between them. And for the first time since Lagos, she initiated contact, placing her hands on his shoulders, looking down into his upturned face. I want to try, she whispered. Something blazed in his eyes. Try. Again. Properly this time. She touched his face, feeling the sharp line of his jaw beneath her fingers. No secrets. No distance. No hiding. Zara. Tell me what you're feeling. Right now. He was silent for a moment. Then, terrified. Hopeful. Like I'm standing on the edge of a cliff, and you're the only thing that could make the fall worth it. Good. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. That's honest. It's the only way I know how to be now. They stayed like that for a long moment. Foreheads touching, breathing the same air. The old Kongday would have moved first. Would have taken control. Would have turned the moment into something he directed. This Kongday waited. Let her set the pace. Let her choose. When Zara finally kissed him, it was soft. Tentative. An exploration rather than a declaration. His hands came up to her face, cradling it gently. He kissed her back with the same care, reverent, patient, as if she were something precious that might break. And somewhere in that careful joining, the last of Zara's walls began to crumble. They took it slowly. That was the agreement, spoken and unspoken. No rushing into anything. No assuming that one kiss erased 3 years of pain. But the kisses continued. Soft ones when he arrived in the morning. Longer ones when Era was asleep. Ones that left them both breathless but went no further. Not because of physical limitations, but because they both understood the importance of patience. Era noticed the change, of course. You're smiley now, she told Zara one morning, with the blunt observation of a 4-year-old. Am I? Yeah. Era nodded sagely. Before you were sad a lot. Now you're smiley. I'm happy, baby. Because of the funny voice man. Zara laughed. His name is Daddy. Yes. Partly because of him. Oh. Era considered this. Can he live with us? The question caught Zara off guard. She looked at her daughter, at those dark, familiar eyes, at the hope written across that small face, and felt her heart expand. Would you like that? Yes. Then I can see him all the time. Era picked up her cereal spoon. And he makes better eggs than you. He does not. He does too. Era crunched on her cereal. But don't tell him I said that. I don't want him to get a big head. Zara burst out laughing. Real, genuine laughter that came from somewhere deep in her chest. She pulled Era into a hug, cereal and all, and held her tight. I love you, baby. I love you too, Mama. Can I have more cereal? Kongday moved into the apartment 3 weeks later. It was a simple transition. His few possessions, his quiet presence, the subtle adjustment of space and routine. He took over the breakfast shifts. Mastered the Nigerian school schedule. Learned Era's bedtime preferences with the thoroughness of a man memorizing intelligence reports. He also, to Zara's surprise, started painting. She discovered it by accident one afternoon, coming home early from a gallery meeting. He was on the balcony with a small canvas, oils spreading across the surface in tentative strokes. I didn't know you painted, she said. He didn't turn around. I don't. Not well. But you're painting. I'm trying. He set down the brush. You used to talk about it. How art made you feel. How it connected you to something bigger than yourself. He finally looked at her. I wanted to understand. She moved to stand beside him, looking at the canvas. It was a crude attempt at the Lego skyline, proportion off, colors muddy, but there was something there. Something trying to emerge. You're learning, she said softly. Slowly. That's okay. She slid her arm around his waist. Slow is good. He turned to wrap his arms around her, pulling her close. She rested her head against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. I have a question, he said. Another one. This one's important. She tilted her head up to look at him. Okay. I want to renew our vows. Zara went still. What? Our marriage, the first one, was built on secrets and silence. On fear and control. He spoke carefully, choosing each word. This marriage, the one we're building now, is different. And I want to mark that. Publicly. With a ceremony that means something. You want to get remarried. I want to marry you for real this time. Not as the man I was, but as the man I'm becoming. His arms tightened around her. Would you? Is that something you would consider? Zara was quiet for a long moment. She thought about the first wedding, the enormous Seoul ceremony, the political guests, the white dress that had felt more like armor than celebration. She thought about the years that followed. The coldness, the loneliness, the slow death of hope. And then she thought about now. The small apartment, the messy breakfast, the man who painted badly because he wanted to understand her. Yes, she said. Relief flooded his face. Yes. On one condition. Anything. Era is the flower girl. And she gets to choose the decorations. He laughed, actually laughed, a sound she had heard so rarely it still surprised her, and lifted her off her feet, spinning her around the narrow balcony. Done, he said against her hair. Completely done. The ceremony was held on the beach in Lagos. Just family and close friends. Zara's sisters, her parents, a handful of people who had helped them during the past year. No security teams. No political guests. No cameras except the one wielded by Era's nanny. Era, true to her privilege, had chosen purple and gold decorations. The arch they stood under dripped with ribbons of both colors. Slightly lopsided. Absolutely perfect. Kongday wore a simple white shirt and linen pants. Zara wore a white sundress that cost less than one button on his old suits. Neither of them cared. The vows they spoke were new. Not the formal phrases of their first wedding, but words they had written themselves over late nights on the balcony. I promise, Kongday said, his voice steady, to never choose silence over truth, to never choose control over partnership, to never choose fear over love. I promise, Zara said, tears streaming freely, to never run without talking first, to never assume without asking, to never give up without fighting. I promise, they said together, to build something new, together, honestly, for the rest of our lives. Era threw flower petals with more enthusiasm than accuracy, covering both of them in purple and white. Someone cheered. Someone else started crying. And on a beach in Lagos, surrounded by family, a Mafia boss who had given up everything and an art curator who had survived everything sealed their second chance with a kiss. The honeymoon was brief. Just 3 days at a resort outside the city while Zara's mother stayed with Era. But it was enough. Enough to remember what it felt like to be held without fear. Enough to learn each other's bodies again, slowly, carefully, with all the reverence of something precious. Enough to wake up beside each other and know that this time it was real. On their last night, they lay tangled together in the hotel sheets, watching the ceiling fan spin lazy circles. I have something to tell you, Kongday said. Zara tensed automatically. Old habits. Don't panic. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. It's good news. What kind of good news? I've been contacted by the International Art Preservation Foundation. He turned to face her. They're looking for a board member to oversee their African expansion. Someone with gallery experience, cultural connections, a background in curation. Zara's breath caught. That's a dream job. I know. He smiled softly. I may have mentioned your name to some people. You what? Made a few calls. Sent some recommendations. Nothing official, they'll want to interview you themselves. But. He touched her face. You gave up your career when you married me the first time. When you built a new life here. I thought maybe. You might want it back. She stared at him, speechless. You don't have to accept, he added quickly. If it's too much too fast, I understand. I just wanted you to have the option. Kongday. Yes. Shut up. She kissed him until neither of them could breathe. Until the words thank you and I love you and how did I get so lucky all blended into a single, overwhelming emotion. I'll take that as interest, he said when they finally parted. You'll take that as yes. He smiled, that rare, full smile that had first made her heart stutter in Singapore. Yes, he agreed. I'll take that as yes. 2 months later, Zara received an official offer from the foundation. Board position. Competitive salary. Complete creative control over their West African initiative. She accepted immediately. The work was everything she had missed. Art, culture, meaningful contribution. She traveled sometimes when the job required it, but Kongday was always there when she returned. Cooking dinner, helping Era with homework, painting his terrible paintings on the balcony. They had become, impossibly, a normal family. Not without challenges. Era went through a stubborn phase. Zara and Kongday argued about household chores like any other couple. And his mother's first visit from Korea was a diplomatic disaster that took weeks to recover from. But they were real challenges. Human challenges. Not assassination attempts or power struggles or the constant weight of an empire. Just life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. The final threat came 3 years after the renewal ceremony. Zara didn't see it coming. None of them did. They had grown comfortable, perhaps too comfortable, in their ordinary existence. The old enemies had faded. The old dangers had dissolved. The old life had become a distant memory. Until Ji-young appeared. She was waiting in the lobby of Zara's office building, dressed in white, looking like she had stepped out of a fashion magazine. The years hadn't dimmed her beauty, if anything she had grown more striking with time. Zara Adeyemi. Ji-young smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Or should I say CO Zara? I can never keep track. Zara's security detail tensed. She held up a hand, keeping them back. What do you want? Just to talk. Woman to woman. Ji-young's smile widened. I've been watching you, you know. Your little family. Your domestic bliss. It's very quaint. If you came here to threaten me. Threaten? Ji-young laughed. No, darling. I came to offer congratulations. You won. Zara frowned. I won. The game. The competition. Whatever you want to call it. Ji-young's smile faded. I spent 5 years trying to destroy your husband. Tried to take his empire. His reputation. His life eventually. All of it failed. And do you know why? Because he's stronger than you. Because he doesn't care anymore. Ji-young's voice turned bitter. You took the one thing that gave him power. His ambition. His drive. His need to be the best, the strongest, the most feared. And you replaced it with this. She gestured vaguely. Finger paintings. Parent-teacher conferences. Family dinners. That sounds like a compliment. It's not. Ji-young stepped closer. He was magnificent, you know. Force of nature. The kind of man who reshapes the world around him. And now he's ordinary. She spat the word like a curse. You made him ordinary. Zara considered her response carefully. Considered the woman in front of her. This beautiful, broken creature who had spent years trying to possess something that was never hers. You're wrong, she said finally. I didn't make him anything. He chose to be different, to be present, to be human instead of a legend. Zara smiled softly. And he's happier than he's ever been. Happier than you could have ever made him, no matter how many schemes you tried. Jiyoung's composure cracked. For a moment, she looked not dangerous but devastated. A woman who had gambled everything on a man who never wanted her. Why? The question came out raw, painful. Why you? What did you have that I didn't? Zara thought about the question seriously. Thought about the first meeting in Singapore. The 3 years of cold marriage. The 3 years of painful separation. The years of rebuilding that followed. Nothing, she said finally. I didn't have anything special. I was just there. The right moment. Saying the right things. And somehow we connected. Not because I was perfect or beautiful or powerful, but because I saw him. The real him. Not the legend. Jiyoung stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. I think I understand now. Her voice had changed, quieter, more resigned. Why I could never compete. It was never a competition. No. Jiyoung took a step back. I suppose it wasn't. She turned toward the door, then paused. Tell him. Tell him I'm sorry. For all of it. The manipulation. The destruction. The years of trying to hurt him. Tell him yourself. I can't. Jiyoung smiled sadly. I don't think I could stand to see how happy he looks now. Left. Zara watched her go, feeling something she hadn't expected. Compassion. Jiyoung had spent years chasing a man who never wanted her. Had destroyed her own family's empire in the pursuit. Had become a villain in a story that was never hers to tell. And in the end she had lost everything. Not to violence or revenge or the collapse of her schemes. To love. Simple, ordinary, transformative love. That night, Zara told Kongday about the encounter. He listened in silence, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. She said she was sorry, he asked finally. Yes. He nodded slowly. Good. That's all. Just good. What else is there? He pulled her into his arms. She spent years trying to destroy us. And she failed. Not because I defeated her, because I stopped fighting. Stopped caring about the game she wanted to play. Aren't you angry? I was. For a long time. He pressed his lips to her hair. But anger takes energy. And I'd rather spend that energy on you. Nera. On this life we've built. Zara settled into his embrace, feeling the steady beat of his heart. You've really changed, she murmured. Have I? The man I married the first time would have wanted revenge. Would have tracked her down. Made her suffer. The man you married the first time was afraid. His arms tightened around her. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being weak. Afraid of loving anyone enough to be hurt by them. And now I've already lost everything once. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. Because it led me back to you. To this. To a life I never knew I wanted. She kissed him softly. I love you. I love you too. He smiled against her lips. More than I ever thought possible. 5 years later, they stood on the same Lagos beach where they had renewed their vows. Era was 9 now. Tall, brilliant, with her father's intensity and her mother's warmth. She had grown into a child who commanded rooms without trying, who observed everything with those piercing dark eyes, who carried herself with a grace that surprised even her parents. Behind them, a smaller figure toddled across the sand. Day, their son, born 2 years after the renewal ceremony. He had Zara's smile and Kongday's stubborn determination. Currently, he was chasing a crab with more enthusiasm than coordination. Don't go in the water. Era called after her brother. Dad, tell him. Kongday scooped up the toddler before he could reach the waves. Your sister's right. No water without supervision. But the crab. We'll still be there tomorrow. He balanced Day on his hip. Right now it's time for dinner. They walked back toward the beach house, a modest property they had purchased with the last of Kongday's legitimate investments. Not grand, not impressive, but theirs. Era ran ahead, chasing the sunset. Day squirmed until Kongday set him down to toddle after his sister. Zara slid her hand into her husband's, watching their children disappear around the corner of the house. Happy? She asked. More than I have words for. No regrets. He considered the question seriously, as he always did. One, he said finally. What? That I wasted so many years being afraid. He turned to face her, the sunset painting his features in gold. All that time I spent building empires, protecting power, controlling everything around me. I thought it would make me safe, make me strong. And this. He gestured at the house, the beach, the children's laughter floating on the evening air. This is what strong actually looks like. Not empires, not power. Family, home. People who love me because of who I am, not what I can give them. Zara squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar warmth of his palm against hers. The years had softened both of them, not weakened but gentled, like stones smoothed by water. You know, she said quietly, I used to dream about this. About what? This exact moment. When I was hiding in Lagos, pregnant and alone, I used to imagine what it would feel like to have you here. Really here. Not the Mafia boss. Not the ghost chairman. Just you. And the reality is better. She smiled up at him. So much better. He leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers. Their gesture now, developed over years of quiet moments. I don't deserve you, he murmured. Probably not. He laughed, that rare, full sound that still made her heart skip. But you're stuck with me anyway, she continued. Forever. That was the deal. The deal. He kissed her softly. I remember. Dinner that night was chaos in the best way. Day refused to eat his vegetables. Era lectured him about nutrition with the authority of a tiny professor. Kongday mediated with the patience of a man who had once negotiated international crime treaties. Zara watched it all with a full heart. This was her life now. Not gallery openings and silent penthouses. Not fear and surveillance and wondering if her husband was a stranger. Just this, messy, loud, imperfect, beautiful. After dinner, they walked to the beach for their evening ritual. Era collected shells while Day splashed in the shallows under Kongday's watchful eye. Zara sat on the sand, letting the warm water lap at her feet. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Mama! Era ran over, hands cupped around something. Look what I found. She opened her palms to reveal a small, perfect cowrie shell, white with delicate brown spots. It's beautiful, baby. It's for you. Era placed it carefully in Zara's hand. Because you always say shells are like memories. And I want you to remember this day. Zara's eyes burned. What's special about this day? Nothing. Era shrugged with the wisdom of a child who hadn't yet learned to overcomplicate things. That's why it's special. 'Cause nothing bad happened. It's just a good day. She ran off before Zara could respond, chasing her brother down the beach. Zara looked down at the shell in her palm. Good day. How many of those had she had really before all of this? Before the running and the hiding and the slow, painful process of rebuilding. She had spent so much of her life preparing for disaster that she had forgotten what ordinary happiness felt like. But she knew now. It felt like cowrie shells and sand between her toes and children's laughter, and a reformed man who still looked at her like she was the most important thing in any room. Felt like home. Later that night, after the children were asleep, Zara found Kongday on the balcony of their bedroom. He was painting again, better now though still not good. The canvas showed the beach at sunset, rendered in bold strokes that captured emotion if not technical precision. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. It's getting better. Marginally. Don't be hard on yourself. You've only been painting for 5 years. He snorted. Most people improve faster than this. Most people don't spend the first 35 years of their lives suppressing all creative impulse. Fair point. She pressed a kiss to his neck, feeling him shiver slightly under her touch. 5 years of marriage. 7 if you counted the first attempt, and her touch still affected him. She loved that. Loved that after everything the spark remained. I was thinking, she said, about. The foundation wants me to oversee a new project. A museum of African diaspora art, right here in Lagos. He set down his brush. That's huge. It would mean more travel, more responsibility, more time away from home. And he turned to face her. What do you want to do? I want to say yes. She met his eyes. But only if you're okay with it. Only if we can make it work with the kids, with our life here. Zara. He cupped her face in his hands, paint-stained fingers gentle against her skin. You spent 3 years running from a life you didn't choose. You spent another 5 building a life you did choose. And now you have a chance to do something extraordinary. He smiled. Of course I'm okay with it. I'll always be okay with anything that makes you happy. You won't feel neglected. I'll feel proud. He kissed her forehead. Proud to be married to a woman who changed the world while I stayed home and made terrible paintings. She laughed, wrapping her arms around his neck. They're not terrible. They're terrible. But I enjoy making them. He pulled her closer. That's what matters now. Not whether something is good enough for others. Just whether it brings joy. When did you become so wise? When I stopped trying to be powerful and started trying to be present. She kissed him then, deep and slow, the kind of kiss that had taken years to earn. The kind that communicated everything words couldn't express. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, the moon had risen over the water. I love you, she said. I love you too. He traced her face with his fingertips, memorizing it as he had done 1,000 times before. More than empires. More than power. More than everything I used to think mattered. That's very romantic. I've been practicing. She laughed again, and he caught the sound with another kiss, and the night wrapped around them like a blessing. The museum opened 18 months later. It was everything Zara had dreamed. A stunning glass structure overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, filled with works that told the story of African art across centuries and continents. Critics called it transformative. Visitors called it moving. Zara called it the culmination of everything she had worked toward. The opening gala was crowded with dignitaries, artists, and cultural figures from around the world. Zara moved through them with practiced ease, answering questions, accepting congratulations, playing the role she had been born for. But her eyes kept finding Kongday. He stood near the back of the room, deliberately unobtrusive, keeping track of era and day as they explored the exhibits. He was dressed simply, dark shirt, no tie, and looked nothing like the terrifying figure who had once commanded criminal empires. He looked like a father, like a husband, like an ordinary man living an extraordinary life. She excused herself from yet another conversation and made her way to him. You're supposed to be mingling, he said as she approached. I mingled enough. Now I want to be with my family. Day immediately attached himself to her legs. Mama, there's a painting of a big cat. A leopard, sweetie. Can we get a leopard? Absolutely not. But, no leopards. Kongday scooped him up. We've discussed this. Era appeared beside them, looking sophisticated in the dress she had insisted on choosing herself. The bronze sculptures are my favorite. The ones from Benin. Mine too, Zara said. I want to make sculptures someday. You can do anything you want, baby. Era smiled. That rare, genuine smile that reminded Zara so much of Kongday in his unguarded moments. I know, she said. You and Dad tell me all the time. She wandered off to examine another exhibit, Day squirming until Kongday set him down to follow his sister. She's going to be formidable, Zara said, watching her daughter move through the crowd. She already is. Just like her father. Better than her father. Kongday's voice was soft. She'll have all the strength without any of the damage. That's all I want for her. Zara leaned into his side. You've been a good father. I've tried. You've succeeded. She looked up at him. I know I don't say it enough, but watching you with them, seeing who you've become. It's the greatest gift you could have given me. His arm tightened around her. Greater than a multi-million-dollar museum. Much greater. Good. He pressed a kiss to her hair. Because the museum came from the foundation. The parenting came from me. She laughed, and the sound drew smiles from nearby guests who didn't understand but appreciated the joy anyway. The evening wound down slowly. Guests departed in waves. First the dignitaries, then the artists, then the friends who lingered until the caterers started cleaning up. Heir had fallen asleep on a bench near the Benin bronzes. Her sophisticated dress wrinkled beyond repair. Day had crashed hours ago, currently being held by his grandmother, who had flown in from Nigeria's eastern region for the occasion. Zara stood in the empty main gallery, looking up at the centerpiece of the collection, a massive installation by a Ghanaian artist, depicting the journey of the African diaspora through layers of woven metal and light. Kongday appeared beside her, silent as always. It's beautiful, he said. It is. You did this. We did this. She turned to face him. None of this would exist without you. Without your support, your patience, your willingness to let me chase this dream while you held everything else together. That's what partners do. That's what good partners do. She took his hands. And you've been a good partner, Kongday. Despite everything. Despite how we started. Despite all the years we wasted. We didn't waste them. He shook his head. The bad years taught me who I didn't want to be. The years apart taught me what I couldn't live without. And these years, he gestured at the museum around them, these years have taught me what's possible when two people choose each other. Fully. Honestly. Every single day. Tears slipped down Zara's cheeks. She didn't bother wiping them. How did we get here? She whispered. From that hotel suite in Seoul to this? We chose differently. He brushed the tears from her cheeks with gentle thumbs. Made different decisions. Became different people. And somehow, against all odds, we found our way back to each other. I still think about it sometimes. What would have happened if I hadn't walked in that day? If Ji Young's plan hadn't worked? We would have stayed trapped. His voice was certain. In a marriage of silence and secrets. I would have kept hiding. You would have kept suffering. And eventually we would have destroyed each other. So her betrayal saved us. Her betrayal broke us open. He smiled sadly. Sometimes things have to shatter before they can be rebuilt stronger. Zara thought about that. About the years of pain that had led to these years of joy. About the woman she had been. Afraid, isolated, convinced she was unloved. And the woman she had become. I wouldn't change it, she said finally. Any of it. Neither would I. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. He pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, melting against his chest. The hard parts made us who we are. Made this. He gestured at the museum, at the life they had built. Possible. She listened to his heartbeat, steady and strong, and felt peace settle over her like a blanket. This was her life now. Not the fearful existence of a mafia wife. Not the lonely struggle of a single mother in hiding. But this, partnership, purpose, a love that had been tested by fire and emerged stronger. Take me home, she murmured against his chest. With pleasure. The drive back was quiet. Heir slept against Zara's shoulder in the back seat. Day snored softly in his car seat, exhausted from the excitement. Kongday drove with one hand, the other resting on Zara's knee, a casual intimacy that had taken years to develop. Legos sprawled around them, lights glittering against the night sky. The city that had sheltered her, hidden her, helped her rebuild. Not the home she had planned. Not the home she had imagined during those early years in Seoul, when she had thought her future was crystal chandeliers and silent penthouses. But home nonetheless. Maybe even better. Because this home she had chosen, had fought for, had earned through years of healing and growth and the slow, painful process of learning to trust again. When they reached the beach house, Kongday carried Day inside while Zara guided a half-asleep heir to her bedroom. The children settled quickly, exhausted, their dreams likely filled with leopards and bronze sculptures. Zara checked on them one final time. Heir's steady breathing, Day's small fist curled around his stuffed lion, before closing their doors softly and making her way to the master bedroom. Kongday was already on the balcony, looking out at the moonlit water. She joined him without speaking, sliding under his arm as naturally as breathing. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For everything." She listed them off in her mind. The patience, the support, the willingness to become someone new. The mornings making breakfast and the nights staying up with sick children. The quiet moments and the loud ones. The life they had built together, piece by piece, day by day. "You don't need to thank me." He pulled her closer. "This is what I wanted. All along, even when I didn't know it. Even when I was too afraid to admit it." "What did you want?" "This." He gestured at the sleeping house, the peaceful night. "A family. Home. Someone who knows me, really knows me, and chooses to stay anyway. I choose to stay. I know." He turned to face her, moonlight catching the silver at his temples. "And I'll spend every day of my life being worthy of that choice." She reached up and touched his face. This face she had feared, had loved, had hated, had learned to love again. The sharp lines had softened with age. The cold eyes had warmed with years of laughter and tears and everything in between. He was not the man she had married the first time. And she was not the woman who had run. They had both become someone new. Together. "Kiss me," she whispered. He did. And in that kiss was everything. The pain of the past, the joy of the present, the promise of the future. Years of separation and years of reunion. Broken trust and rebuilt faith. Two people who had nearly destroyed each other, finding instead a love that could survive anything. When they finally parted, breathless, the moon had reached its zenith. "Bed?" he asked softly. "Bed?" He took her hand and led her inside, closing the balcony doors behind them. The night wrapped around the beach house, peaceful and quiet, protecting the family within. Years later, when people asked Zara about her life, she would tell them about the museum, about the foundation work that had expanded across 3 continents, about the children who had grown into remarkable adults, Era, a sculptor whose work hung in galleries worldwide, Day, a quiet lawyer who specialized in refugee rights. But when they asked about her husband, the mysterious Korean man who had appeared in Lagos and never left, she would simply smile. "He's my partner," she would say. And that word contained everything. The man who had once controlled empires now spent his mornings in a small studio, painting seascapes that had finally, after 15 years, become good. The man who had once been feared by governments now argued with market vendors about fish prices and taught neighborhood children to play chess. He had become fully and completely ordinary. And in that ordinariness, he had found peace. They both had. On their 20th anniversary, they returned to the beach where they had renewed their vows. Era was there with her husband and daughter, a toddler with Zara's smile and Kongday's watchful eyes. Day came alone, preferring solitude, but present nonetheless. Zara's sisters and their families filled out the gathering, along with friends accumulated over 2 decades of Lagos life. The ceremony was simple. No formal vows this time. Just the 2 of them, standing where they had stood 20 years before, looking into each other's eyes. "I love you," Kongday said simply. "I love you too. Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for becoming someone worth choosing." He smiled, that full, rare smile that still made her heart skip, even after all these years. "Shall we do another 20? At least. Just at least." I don't want to commit to more than I can deliver. Her eyes sparkled. Ask me again in 20 years. He laughed, loud and free, a sound their grandchildren had never known him to suppress, and pulled her into a kiss. Around them, family cheered. The sun set over Lagos. And Kongday, former Mafia boss, reformed criminal, devoted husband, beloved father, improbable grandfather, held his wife and felt, for the first time in his life, completely whole. That night, lying in bed, Zara traced the tattoo that still curved beneath his collarbone. The dragon that had once symbolized his power, his legacy. The criminal empire that had nearly destroyed them both. Now was just ink on skin. A reminder of who he had been. A testament to who he had become. I used to hate this tattoo, she admitted. I know. It reminded me of everything that separated us. All the secrets. All the darkness. And now. She pressed her lips against the dark lines. Now it reminds me of how far you've come. How much you've changed. His hand came up to cradle her head, holding her gently against his chest. I used to think this tattoo defined me, he said quietly. The power it represented. The fear it inspired. I thought that was who I was. And now I know better. He tilted her chin up to meet his eyes. This, he touched her face, defines me. Our children. Our grandchildren. The life we've built. His voice dropped. The love you've given me. Tears slipped down Zara's cheeks. After all these years, he could still move her to tears. The man feared by all of Seoul, she whispered, became gentlest only with the family he almost lost, he finished. It was a phrase she had used once years ago, to describe what she hoped he could become. He had remembered, had carried it with him, had made it true. I love you, she said. I love you too. He pulled her closer, wrapping around her like a promise. Forever. Forever. The night deepened around them. Outside, the Lagos Ocean whispered against the shore. And two people who had survived betrayal, silence, separation, and the slow, painful process of rebuilding lay tangled together in the darkness, finally at peace. Finally home. Finally whole.